Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Steve, welcome. I think we talked at the same time. What a
Yeah,
start.
great start. We're off to a roaring start. Good to see you, man. We're both outside enjoying the weather before we all have to go inside and hibernate for months.
Yep, this is awesome. Nice and a little cool, but I think it's actually going to get blazing hot again this week, believe it or not.
I'll take it while we get it.
Me
So,
too. Me too. I never complain about hot, and I never complain when summer goes too long, and I think fall is always the best season in New Jersey.
I agree. September usually is the best weather. There's no better place to be than New Jersey in September. So,
September, October, right? And sometimes you even get a nice week in November.
sometimes the end of October is a little sketchy, but we'll we'll
Nope,
hang on.
I'm going in faith. October is going to be nice.
You know, October is when we got Irene and Sandy and like
Yeah, I don't care.
it's 2020.
It iced that one year for Halloween.
Oh yeah,
Remember?
yeah.
Yeah.
We were at an event that you were speaking. We were doing music.
Oh yeah. I,
I, you don't remember that?
I
Anyway,
remember last year we were gonna do raking all over North Jersey, and we got like a blizzard.
yeah, we tried.
Yep.
We really tried. Some people shoveled snow instead.
Mhm.
Uh, so hey, we're gonna do something a little different. This is actually a free for all Friday.
Oh,
Um, we were doing them on Thursday, but this week we're doing it Friday. So here we are, and we don't have a guest today like we've had in the past few weeks. And uh,
nice. Everyone just turned off.
yeah, wait, I gotta listen to these two jokers. But for those of you who stuck around, we don't have a guest today, and the reason we don't is because we just wanted to just share a little bit about this season of church life. And you spoke, Ryan, last week about just a little bit of an understanding of vision for this time as we were talking about lessons from lockdown, talking about what it means to be the church right now, and wanted to take a little time to just bring a little more clarity to that, some more teeth to that understanding for folks, and to really wrap our minds around in this season of life in the church. And look, we hope it's a short season. We hope this is that we can kind of get back to what used to be more normal for everyone very shortly. But as long as we don't, just recognizing that this is not a dead season. This is a season that should be alive within the church. How does that sound?
That sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. I thought you were going to ask me a specific question.
I did. How does that sound, Ryan?
I agree. I I think not only do I agree, I think what you see in the Bible is, we've been saying throughout the series is pestilence and plague, though unique for us, are actually pretty common in our universe. And if you look specifically at the New Testament, things like difficulty, trial, there's a famine in Jerusalem that's the churches are raising funds for to support. Um, and and yet the mission of God is stronger than ever in the book of Acts, despite the difficulty, despite the nuance. Like, honestly, if we need um, the American version of going to church, which I love, right, which is awesome, but if we and I look forward to when we can go back to a form of that. If we need that to be faithful with what we think Christianity is, we probably need to go back and rediscover um, the book of Acts a bit and see how, in spite of difficulty, um, in spite of conflict, not only were people faithful, people were actually flourishing. They were asking for prayer, they were walking in community, they weren't neglecting those things, they loved the church, they weren't lone rangers, right? Because that's the fear, right? Some people, the lone ranger Christian who hates the church, um, thinks, well, you guys, the church is in the way anyway. Those guys never really do well over the long haul, because I think of the church often like, in some ways, in my mind, it's a little like the charging station. Uh, we go in and we get equipped, and we get encouraged. We celebrate who Jesus is, and in the hopes of not just uh, not just being encouraged, of going back out. And so I think what this tends to reveal is, have I been going back out, right? Um, because the danger is we're all out and we never come back in. We end up fizzling. Like, I don't know. Do you know anyone, Steve, that's not gone to church for a long time and done well? Or no, right?
Well, what we see a lot of times is people who kind of slowly begin to get on the margin. And again, it's not about like going to the 1 hour event every week. It's about being a part of the family of God. It's about being a part of a people unified on mission. Like, you've talked about, you know, equipping means to kind of bind up the nets. That's what equipping meant. That we would have the right equipment and it would be functioning. And so as fishers of men, as God tells us to be, that's what Jesus says He's making us. No longer just going to do your work of fishing or whatever your work is, but your real work is to go fish for men and to be used by God to see Jesus save people in this net of salvation. And we need our nets bound back up. But if you're not fishing, like if you're not actually going out fishing for men, then what's the point of being equipped? Why are you binding the nets?
Yeah, it's almost like, some people use the analogy of I've been fed. Well, if you get fed for the mission, but if you're not going out and laboring, you're just gonna grow obese, right? Like, there is a form of maybe obese Christianity, and then what happens when you're obese or when you're stuffed? We've all been there, right, Steve? What happens? I mean, Steve's skinny now, but what happens when you overeat is the food no longer even becomes that good. You become more picky.
As well, that becomes you have to do it because it's not about enjoyment of it, and you have that side of people who are obese spiritually and not doing the work to burn the food.
Yeah.
But then you also have the other side of people who are tanked out. They're emaciated spiritually.
Yep.
And I've been talking to a lot of people. I have some people close to me, family members, who do a really amazing, faithful job of serving and loving and in some ways, in extraordinary ways that I don't even understand fully. Like I've never done some of the things they've done in service of Christ. And they're tanked out because we're not meeting on the weekend. Because they really did look to the weekend as binding up the nets. But what that tells me is that was where sometimes our nets get bound up, but we're not walking in community the way we should be to get them bound up in other ways, to get them repaired in other ways. So if we're relying on the Sunday gathering to bind our nets, but the Sunday gathering isn't there, we still need our nets bound.
Yep.
And we still need to be walking with others who can come alongside and repair the net with us so that we can still fish. And if that's what you were looking to Sunday for, then yeah, of course you're going to feel like your net's torn up. Yep. And I've got nothing left and I can't even fish anymore because my net's destroyed. And so we need to walk in community, and it's one of the reasons why I love what you shared last week, just about helping all of us understand biblically that we do need to walk in this time still gathering together and still walking in community with one another, even though Sunday looks different. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about kind of 3 pillars to make sure that we understand that this is this season of ministry for us. It does look different, but if you're not living out this call in community, plugging in with others, binding up one another, then you're going to absolutely feel like you're destroyed. You're going to feel empty. You're going to feel like you can't fish. You're going to want to at times tap out because you go, what's the point? I go out and the fish just go through the net.
Yep.
So,
because God's designed us to, when God made his people for his mission, he knows we need both. We need both his people and his mission to flourish.
Yep.
You got a nice angelic son. Oh, there it is.
I'm shifting things around here as much as that makes me look better. So Ryan, a couple months ago we sent out a survey just to gauge, people's mindset, where we're at right now, and not that we want to make decisions by populace, because a lot of times you make awful decisions that way, but because we want to know where people's heads are at. And we're going to share these kind of three pillars of ministry for right now, but just wanted to share a couple things that came out of that survey that we found. And I was a little bit, I don't know what I was expecting going in, but probably nothing, because you can't expect anything in 2020. But I was a little bit surprised in terms of what we saw in the numbers, because we're Jersey, like Jersey's like, look, you're going to tell me that I can or can't do something, and forget you, I am going to do what I want, and no one's going to tell me, especially North Jersey, and it was interesting seeing the numbers that came back, because what we saw was about a third of people said, I ain't going back anytime soon. Like they were like, y'all have fun with your thinking about going back to services.
I'll be here with my computer.
Yeah.
And my Zoom community, which, listen, for some of you guys, we get it. We get why that makes sense.
Yeah. So I wasn't necessarily shocked on that number. Mm-hmm. It was surprising to see that about a little more than a third of other people were like, hey, you know what, I'll get back, but I'm going to watch and see what happens. I'm not jumping in. And
I want to see what happens to the folks who go back in 2 months. They're like the people watching the kids at school in Georgia. Going, what's happening for real?
Yeah. Yep. And I think that was also, by the way, in the square in the middle of summer, beginning of summer even. And, and I would think if those numbers, in another month or two, when we start hitting even on healthy years, we see in the winter people kind of batten down the hatches a little bit because of flu season and whatnot. So I think even those numbers might even change a little bit as things progress along, but that's just speculation. A little less than a third of people said, hey, we want to come back, and so you look at that and go, okay, we're a pretty large church, there's that's a good number of folks. But then even when you drill down in those numbers, it was interesting seeing the response of people who even said that they are wanting to come back sooner than later.
Yep.
So if you take that's a third of people. Half of those people said that when they come back, they want the numbers in the room to be 25 to 30% of people capacity. And the vast majority of people said, we want to come back fully with masks on, that they're mandatory for everybody there. And then you read the comments from people that they sent in, because we gave space for people to write, their own responses in. And almost everybody was like, I'm not coming back if I have to wear a mask. Mm-hmm. And so then when you start drilling into these things, just from a practical level, people are not looking to jump immediately back in. And even if they do want to jump back in, they want to see all masks on, very few people in the room, and people who were serving before, more than half of them said, even when I come back, I'm not going to jump into serving right now. So now we're talking about, picture half of those that were serving before. So now your teams are depleted by half. Everyone wants to wear masks but doesn't want to wear masks.
No, they want everyone else to wear a mask.
And totally distant, which means, the fellowship aspect is just non-existent. It's not like it was before. And look, we provided an opportunity for us all to get together in a safer way through Sermon on the Mount. We're talking about other ways to potentially have people together worshiping in some unique ways and opportunities. But the picture is very different than what I thought it might be, when we got those results back. And So just starting from that place, recognizing that I think people's expectation or what they think people think may be different than what the reality is for a lot of folks.
And I always think of what, a couple months ago we had our friend Jay on, who's a church consultant, and he was saying a lot of what people love about church. Some people love going and learning. Some people love going and seeing friends and serving. Like, now all those things are spread out, but for some it's fellowship is the top of the chart. He said for those folks who are just so missing the fellowship, even when we go back, you won't necessarily have that right away, because of social distancing, masks, and some of the other stuff involved in that.
Yeah. And so, just keeping that in mind and looking at the responsibility we have as a church, and our responsibility is not primarily to make sure that those who want to get back to Sunday, we run into that as fast as we can. Our responsibility is to be effective, to equip the saints for acts of service, to make disciples who make disciples, to provide for effective and uh, ministry opportunities for people to grow and also be sent. Um,
And I think you and I feel the sense of, we want to do what equips the most amount of people at our church in the best way possible. And because we can do everything.
yeah.
We just on a back end reality, we don't have currently, the equipment, resources, staffing to do everything. We're building some of that out, but
We can't do a virtual service at the level we've been doing it,
Mhm.
which is a great resource for people to send out to friends, which is a great resource for the gospel to go out, that people are using to send out to people and share the gospel and invite people into our service, our family, as a church. We can't do that and make it the resource that it's been, as well as um, do the work of a live service for a very small number of people in a setting where expectations aren't going to be met, for these people who do come, at the expense of the mission going on in a valuable way and an effective way, by doing what we're doing right now at the level we are. Um,
It's kind of like the conversation I have with my own kids a lot, where they're like, "Hey, my friend's family is doing this. They're going to their beach house on the ocean this summer. Why don't we have a beach house?" And I give the conversation, well, hey, this is our family, right? This is what God's entrusted to us, and most importantly, we're on God's mission. And so, what's it look like to be on God's mission in our family with our resources? And sometimes I just like to scale that question up for our church. Okay, this is our family. This is our resources. This is God's mission for us in New Jersey. So what's it look like for us to do that the best we can with what we have?
yeah, and I know there are some churches in our area that, some smaller churches, faithful churches, who have opened up for in-person services. And if you talk to their leaders, they would say, "Listen, I mean, we typically have 100 people on a weekend anyway." Um, and so for us, the percentage of people that we can feed by having a live service of our church family is huge. Um, you know, for us, it is a little different, and we're gonna get back to live services, and we want to, but we also have a responsibility to uh, to a large group of people that God's placed in our care as a church family, and to equip them well to be a sent army of people for Christ. And um, so it is a little bit different, and it takes some, in some ways, like you've shared, it takes a shift of our mind, but it's a good shift. It's a shift we need anyway. And even when we get back to regular meeting, it's a shift that we have to live in light of anyway to be effective ministers of Christ.
Yep. And just one more thing, Steve, the last stats I read of churches our size, we're seeing, for those that reopened a bit slowly, we're seeing about 12 to 20% of the congregation come back. just because of what we saw in our survey, right? The third. Um, so we look at that and go, okay, but we have the responsibility to try to be as impactful as we can with the people we have. And so, truthfully, for us, we feel like, okay, if we could sacrifice a little on Sunday, and yet get 3,000, 2,000 people watching and on mission and serving in community, that's far more impactful than 12%. So
Yeah, and community is so essential in
yeah.
this. When I say essential, I don't mean like, hey, it's a really good thing. I mean like it is essential. If you're not getting together on Sunday with the large gathering of people, and you're not getting in community with people somewhere in your life who can encourage each other and bind up each other's nets, you are not going to survive this time of being a faithful Christian.
I mean, we're just seeing it in our world, right? Like, not, you take out the mission of God, you're seeing the effects mentally on people right now. The rise in alcohol, the rise in mental illness. I mean, that's very real. Not even, I mean, you take out the mission of God, just how God's wired us as humans. God makes Adam in Genesis, and it's not in perfection. Adam still needs something, and so he makes Eve. I mean, that's the design of humanity. So put on top of that how important God's mission is, which is going to be hard in a broken, sinful world and discouraging and all that stuff without some believers in your life. And you can do that on Zoom for those of you guys who have those issues, and it works pretty good. But I'm saying without some kind of brotherhood or sisterhood, you're just not built for that. It's asking you to do something you're not built for.
Yeah, and what we're seeing even in friends in ministry in the area who have opened up, you have to do it by a reservation system, of course, because you have to limit your numbers. So, I have a friend in ministry in the area, and they've got a growing church, thriving church. Just talking to him about what they're seeing since they've opened up, because I'm trying to go, hey, is it being effective? How is it going? And he said, listen, we've got 100 signups, and we see less than half of those people who signed up to come actually show up because they want to, and yet there is a reluctance. And so I was talking to somebody else, and they're like, well, that's kind of pathetic that people won't get together for service on the weekend. And I said, listen, I understand why people are reluctant, but perhaps it's even more sad that without that gathering, so many people have forgotten how to live as fruitful Christians on mission because we don't have Sunday. And that is even more of an indictment on, look, I'll say our church and every church. That's even more of an indictment on us as Christians in the world we're in right now than I think people who sign up and don't end up showing up to a weekend gathering. And that's why what you talked about last week, what we've been talking about, what we're going to share a few points of today, that's why this is so key for us to get. Whether we're meeting on Sunday in a large gathering or not, if we're going to be fruitful Christians on mission for Christ, these things have to become, once again, in the church, they have to become reality. And we have to live in light of that reality all the time, because if we don't, we're just going to go back to gatherings on the weekend, and we're going to be a completely impotent, powerless group of people who just live for getting together for that hour on the weekend. And that would be the saddest reality of all at the end of all this pandemic, if that's what we go back to without mission.
Even for us as a church, we're saying, hey, the metric has never been Sunday attendance. And when we went to online, the metric was never, hey, the win is how many virtual hits we get. I mean, that's just a shift of the same metric. The metric for us is, how are we going out and impacting North Jersey? How are we doing at sharing our faith? How are we doing at loving our neighbor? How are we doing at bringing justice? Are we actually on God's mission, or do we just go to church?
Kingdom being populated, are people coming to life? Are we sharing the gospel? What you shared, last week or the week before, just about even stats about, sharing. I was talking to somebody about it last night. We had a little community at our home, and was just talking about the things of God. And they said, man, that was like sobering to hear, like, that small percentage of people share the gospel. I said, but think about it. All the Christians that you know in your life, how many of them have you actually heard them explicitly share the gospel out of their mouth?
Or just, has anyone ever shared the gospel with you?
Yeah.
Since you've been a Christian, has anyone tried to share the gospel with you? And it's actually fun if someone does, because
Yeah.
because you get to, like,
Really? I'll trust in Jesus. Yeah, but it is. It's so hard because what has become Christian life is missing a lot of what God tells us is Christian life. And so we're going to just quickly. There's not a lot of bullet points on these. These are basically kind of three things that, as we spent time praying about this and saying, God, we need your wisdom on how to navigate this. What do we need to be focused on? What are we getting at right now as a church? These are the things that we're getting at.
And I think in this unique way, that's the beauty of this season, right? Because I get to go, oh wow, have I really been doing this or not? Like, because when this went away, this form of the gathering went away, suddenly I realized, oh man, have I been really living this out, or do I just go on Sunday? I joke with you, Steve, it's an analogy no one else is going to get, but I have this secret deep admiration for Bill Belichick, because I think he's the best football coach ever. Take morality and cheating out of it and all that stuff. But I think every coach who works with Bill Belichick thinks they're a great coach. And then they go out and they get head coaching jobs and they all get fired. And it must be one of those moments where they go, wait, am I really as good a football coach as I thought? Or have I just kind of been covered by Bill? And I wonder, without the gathering, it's like, wait, am I really on this mission? Or has this been kind of the covering that I thought, oh man, I am.
And I think that's a great analogy, as much as I don't like Bill Belichick or the Patriots. But but I think also what it shows is some people absolutely have been on mission. You've been great. But when you take away Sunday, the way that we've known it, what you find is maybe you didn't have some of the healthy things around you that you need to continue on mission. And you get burnt out, and now you're exhausted, and you find that you're angry, and you find that you're frustrated, and you're frustrated we can't meet on Sunday in the same way, and you're going, let me find everything to blame for why I'm feeling this way right now. It's the government, it's the governor. And look, I'm not saying that the government makes all the right decisions, or the governor does. We know he doesn't. But the reality is, when those things are pulled away, it maybe exposes, hey, I've been living on mission, but I can't live on mission unless something I can't keep going unless something changes. And there's clearly some things missing in my Christian life that are leaving me feeling this way when Sunday gathering is not there. And and it's a great time to go, what is being exposed in a loving way, because some of you guys are killing it on mission. But it's killing you because you're not walking in mission with some of the things that you need to, that God tells us we need to. So let's share those three things. Again, these are not rocket science, crazy stuff. It doesn't take a whole lot of details to figure it out, but we're just going to share them and then comment quickly on each one of them. The first one is this. In this season, we have to understand we are not just 4 locations, but hundreds of locations. And if we want a word picture for that, we're not a house on a hill. We're a city. It's not just an individual house, but it's a city. It's a collection of hundreds of locations, not just 4 sites of emergence. And so that's the first thing, right?
Yeah, and I think this one gets into some cool, when you really start to dream and go, what's it mean for my house to be part of the city on the hill? It gets into some cool ownership of my Christian faith, right? no longer is it, and there will be a day where we go back to the four gatherings of emergence, but like you said, it's not the four gatherings on Sunday. It's now hundreds and hundreds of homes all over North Jersey. Some are doing watch parties, some are watching as families, some are watching on their phones, but they're going, okay, I'm committed to this congregation as a member. I'm committed to this local body. I'm committed to the mission of God. And so because I'm committed to it, I'm going to be at a house here. And it's unique to begin to think about, I want my neighbors to see this house as part of the church in New Jersey. I want to be the light in a season where people are confused and without clarity and lost. I want them to see the light of the gospel. And so it's a really cool ownership opportunity is what kind of jumps out in my mind first, that where I get to really own that this is we always say you come to the large church and you got your small church. Well, now you're going to watch the large church in the small church, which is really a cool opportunity. And I think you'll find a lot of examples of that in the Bible if you begin to look at how many times the church is in houses, how faithful. We've talked about this verse a number of times when the persecution breaks out of the megachurch in Jerusalem in the book of Acts, chapter 8. They scatter and they go from home to home to home to home to home, and they continue on the mission. They're even actually more fruitful, which is amazing.
Yeah, this is something that just hit me, a week or two ago, where I was just thinking, like, and even in my own mind as a pastor in a church in New Jersey, I think sometimes when we read the Bible, we see like you're a city on a hill. I think sometimes we start to have this weird conglomeration of different ideas in the way we live our faith, where it's almost like we can start to think, oh, the city on a hill is like Sunday, like. Sunday when we gather, we're the gleaming city because we're all together and we have a big service, and but it's nothing about the gathering when he's talking about that. He's saying you as a people, 100% of your time, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, you are always the city on a hill. It's not about the gathering, and so we don't lose that city because we're not gathering in a large group anymore. In fact, it may show that we haven't been living as that city on a hill because of the gathering. And I don't like the gathering's awesome, but it may just reveal that because we've had the gathering to lean on, we haven't been living as the city on a hill that we're called to be every moment of every day. That is not the city. You are the city. Your homes make up this kingdom, make up this city. And we're placed here to shine every day, wherever we are, always. We should be on mission and living this out. And so, yeah, again, not 4 locations. Emergence is hundreds of locations. It's homes. Your home, when you turn on that service and your family's with you or you invite friends in, your home is Emergence Church. You are connected to the church as a whole, and you are also Emergence as a local church where you are. And so it's a mindset thing.
Yeah, and I always hope that Sunday is much more like, and I feel bad for overly sporting analogy. I'm sorry for those of you guys who hate sports. Just forgive that in me. But I always feel like, when the Giants won the Super Bowl, they go out and throw a ticker tape parade and everyone celebrates in the streets. I think of Sunday like that. Like we come back together and celebrate another week on the mission of God, another week on of faithfulness of God. Now, sometimes we're going to repent and sometimes we're going to be convicted in that, but my hope always is we're celebrating another week of the victory of God on Sundays.
Yeah, and here's where the sporting analogy breaks down a little bit, because I do know churches, and I grew up around myself thinking this way, especially being in ministry, that sometimes it's like, oh, it's Sunday, this is game day, and because that's football is it's Sunday game day. You work
that's helpful for staff, right? But
that's it's almost anti-helpful.
Yep.
For us to think like it's about Sunday, because it's not. It's about every other day. It's about people always say the game is won during training. That's where it's won. And for the Christian, I'll add to the sporting analogy. The game is won. The mission is accomplished in the everyday. It's Sunday is just where we get to celebrate that, and hopefully we're hearing stories of how other people have done that during the week, and and so. Yeah, it's a very different mindset, and it's one that even for me, I have to constantly retrain my brain because I've grown up in this. I've just grown up in that culture. Sunday is not the point. Sunday should be the celebration of the point every other day,
You
and
want to you want to hear something interesting, Steve? And I'm just thinking out loud here, so this might make zero sense. Um, so I'm just confessing that on the sports analogy. So the teams in bubbles right now, like hockey, basketball, it's really fascinating. The teams that are doing well aren't the teams with the most talent right now. The teams that are doing well are the teams that are young, that aren't married, that don't have kids at home or wives at home. And what's happening uniquely in those teams is they're the young guys all playing ping pong together. They're the young guys exploding in rich community, while some of these better teams, but distractions outside the bubble aren't as effective, and some of these other teams are coming alive. And I think that's another picture of just the importance of community, of people you love, for effectiveness as you accomplish the mission, you know. And
nice,
what's that?
nice thinking out loud. I like that. I like that analogy.
All right, no more sports analogies, we promise.
We're going to cut it off on this one. So that's the first one. Not 4 locations, hundreds, not a house, but a city. Here's the second one. We're on offense in this season. Communities make disciples, and multiplying is mission. You know, when we talk about this season, people are like, well, why is the church on defense? Like, we should be on offense, and yeah, you're right. We should be on offense, and we should be on offense together on this mission every day and in our communities. We should be multiplying people in our communities. We should be sharing the gospel, inviting people into our communities, inviting people into our homes and our watch parties. And, you're right. We should not be on defense. For those of you that are going like, why are we cowering? If we're cowering, that's wrong. We shouldn't be. We're not cowering to the government. The government can't stop the mission of God. Regulations can't stop the mission of God. We should be on offense. Communities making disciples together, bringing people in, multiplying disciples and communities through the mission that goes on, even apart from the large gathering on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. I think if you love emergence, right, for all, and listen, I'll be the first person. If you want to complain about emergence and what we could do better, listen, I probably got the longest list, right, Steve? if someone wants to nitpick, come on over. We could spend hours together doing it, right?
No, we're trying. We're working on it.
Starting with me, right? I can nitpick myself. I hated the blue shirt I wore last week. I looked stupid in that thing. I told the staff, you got to tell me when I look like that. So like I can nitpick, but I would say if you love emergence in spite of all its weaknesses, probably the thing you love most about emergence is it has consistently said, no matter what, as a church, we're going to be on offense. Not because and this isn't sports, not because we just want to be on offense for the sake of being on offense, and not because we're unhealthy and we don't want to deal with our stuff, right? Because we're in this weird season right now where it's like salvation through therapy, and I love therapy. We have full-time therapists on staff. No, we are on offense because Jesus says, I will build my church and the gates of hell won't prevail against it. And so when we are on offense, we're doing what Jesus tells us to do. And I think in spite of our many weaknesses as a church, one of our unique strengths has been the refusal to not go out again on offense. And pandemic doesn't stop that. Jesus doesn't stop building his church even in pandemic. And so it's fair for you to step back and go, you know what, I'm part of an imperfect church, but one of the things I love about my imperfect church is it's committed for all its days to be on offense for the sake of the gospel and the Great Commission. And we're gonna be even in this season.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's important to just remember that, this is not defensive. No, we're on offense because Jesus is on offense. He's always at work, pillaging hell and populating heaven by his power.
One caveat in that: there's times to rest, there's times to the Sabbath, there's times for that. There's a big difference between Yeah,
I'm sorry.
There's a big difference between leisure and rest, and a lot of people, what they think of rest, they think of leisure. There, those are you guys who know true rest. You know what it is to open the Word of God, to have a day you spend with Him, and be refreshed in your soul. Um,
And it's amazing how God uses us even in our rested times where we know we need to you know bind up and we need to care, even doing some self care. Um, the opportunities God gives you in the midst of that, even to encourage someone else and to walk alongside Him and be used by Him. So, yeah, that's a great point too. So, number one, we're not just 4 locations, hundreds, not just a house, but a city. Second one, we're on offense, communities making disciples, multiplying is part of the mission that we should be multiplying. And then third, and this really flows out of that, but our gatherings are different, but our mission hasn't changed. And maybe you're gathering in your home, maybe you're gathering in your community. Um, Hopefully, both of those things, as we especially get into a new community season, which we'll mention details about that really quickly as we finish up today. But the gatherings look different. We get that. It's not the same, and we're not just saying, "Oh, come on, guys, nothing's changed." No, it has changed. But the mission hasn't changed. What we're here for hasn't changed, and we're called to live that out. Now in this context.
And I would just say, one of the things we often talk about, embrace this opportunity. This is a unique season, and so embrace the unique opportunity. We've heard all kinds of cool stories, right? Some people have friends where there's people who are compromised, so they're trying to really limit their contacts, but they'll do a Zoom call after the service and pray about what they heard. They'll pray for each other before the service. Other folks are meeting in communities. We've heard stories of people doing things like barbecues and inviting friends, neighbors who are like, man, I've never been to church, but I love this. People having folks over for it. I know for me, so since I've been a pastor, I've never gone to church with Rochelle. And, we just never go together. We drive separately. And so one of the cool things about this season is, a couple of weeks ago, I'm sitting, right, watching myself, which is weird. But I'm actually convicting myself. I'm sitting, I'm being convicted by myself, which is the weirdest thing ever. and I get to talk to her about that. Like, I think I somehow virtually just convicted myself, but God works, his word is active. And so just to enjoy even the conversations with Rochelle after service is a unique season.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, look, for 17, 20 years, not having this time, and we most likely won't have this time again, when it's over. I mean, I hope we don't, for these reasons, have this kind of time again. And yeah, it's interesting how, we always say we're preaching to ourselves, when we're preaching, even sitting and singing along, with my family, so when I'm on the screen singing, there's the function of praising together, the function of saying, God, would you have your spirit move through your word, even if it's yourself preaching. Man, it just proves, that that's how the Spirit works. It goes out, and we can still do that with one another. The gospel is powerful if you're hearing it for the first time or the 3 millionth time, because the mission hasn't changed and the potency of the gospel hasn't been reduced because of this, and so we have to recognize, yeah, it is different. We absolutely get that, but the mission is the same. The potency of the gospel is the same. God still wants to work through our homes and our lives and our church to see people saved. And one thing that we've been talking about a little bit is one things that I've missed, so much in this summer. Typically, at the beginning of summer, we have a baptism, and getting to hear the stories, and we need to find a way to communicate those stories, because these stories are happening. People are coming to faith, and Jesus needs glory for that. He deserves glory for that. He doesn't need it. He's not needy, but he deserves glory for that. And, so even being able to find a way to somehow tell those stories, we want to be able to do that because the mission is going forward, and people need to hear that and see that and be reminded of that. And so, those are the three big things, right now that we're getting at as a church. And one of the main ways to do that is as we head into the fall. I mean, fall, we talked about at the beginning of this call how much we love the fall. It's a great time of year here. But one of the reasons that I love the fall so much is that we get back to some of the rhythms that we really do need to walk in, which is communities meeting together. Some continued through the summer because of the unique nature of pandemic, but most of them are kicking off here in the next several weeks. And so if you're not currently, if you haven't been plugged into a community of people, look, I know it's weird if you don't know anybody. I mean, if you know someone who's in a community, call them up, shoot them a text, say, hey, what community are you in? I want to jump in, and be a part of theirs, because it's always a little easier when you know somebody. But if you don't know anyone, take a step, get to know some folks, because you cannot just sit there and bind up your own net alone to be effective on mission, and to do that without growing weary and tired and burnt. And so this is the time to jump in. We're going to hit a good season of ministry now. We're going to hit the series in Joshua I'm excited about, to talk about what it means to walk into kind of a new reality as God's people, which is what the people in the book of Joshua are walking into. And so kind of cool to be able to talk about those things too.
Yeah, super excited for the fall, super excited for Joshua. But like you said, Steve, for a lot of folks, we all want to take our next step. I know Steve and I regularly will wonder, what is our next step of growth? And I hope that's a question we're all asking. And for some of you guys, the truth is we have a lot of need right now in community. We have hundreds of community leaders, 150 something, I think. But we're going to need more in this season because the need is great right now. And truthfully, some of your next step is saying, I need to be a leader. I need to at least pursue leadership. We can even, what would be the contact for them, Steve, if they wanted to do that?
Yeah, the easiest way to do that right now is one of three places, but the easiest one is if you want to text the word communities to the number 31996. I'll repeat it again because I know it's on first glance. So get out your pen or your notes on your phone, or just pull up your text message and write the number 31996 and who you're sending it to. So 31996 and then the word communities. And then you'll get the opportunity to get that form, and it's just a really short form saying either I want more information about being in a community, or I want more information about potentially leading one. If you missed that number or you can't figure out how to do that right now, just go to our website, emergencenj.org. If you click connect and then communities, there's a link there, or you can go to our digital bulletin and it's listed there as well. And it's the same form. It's just easiest to, if you have your phone to text it, you can do that really easily right now.
And some of your next step is, I need to be in one, right? And maybe you've had a bad experience. Maybe you had a great experience, but it just drifted. All the distractions are largely gone. So it's time to take a step back into that. And we have virtual options. So you'll see it on the sign up, some are all virtual because we get it, right? For those of you guys who are in that place. And we have live options. The one experience that's usually not that great is a hybrid. But the virtual or live are both pretty good.
Focus on the people in your group if you got some in the room and others on joining in remotely. So we're trying to separate those into all virtual or all live. So jump into that. I just know, look, if you want to grow, which we all should, because otherwise you just get frustrated with yourself, you get frustrated with life. If you want, and you don't really, there's no such thing as neutral. We've talked about this. There's no like, hey, I'm just going to sit here at this spot. You're either growing or you're devolving into, you're digressing into something that you don't want to be, because you'll drift from Christ. You have to abide, and to do that, you need to walk with others. And I just know, in terms of my next steps, I wouldn't know what those next steps are without people around me. Without friends around me, without friends without Ryan sharing with me things that I need to grow in that he sees, without my wife sharing things, hey, you responded this way. Like, you need people in your life. Without my community group around me going, hey, how you doing with that? Because you can't do it in isolation. You just don't know. You don't see. You're blind. And so if you want to grow and thrive, you have to intentionally do it. and communities is such a great way to take that step. So that's what we're hoping, for this fall. Man, we'd love to see 100% of people in community, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, and to really be hundreds of locations, throughout New Jersey, pursuing Jesus together and being on mission. So, anything else, Ryan, as we wrap up?
No, man, I'm looking forward to how God works this fall, right? I'm looking forward to see what I love about the season. It's a big experiment. We get some of you guys have always wondered what would it look like to do house church? What would it look like to live in the book of Acts? You get your opportunity. It's pretty awesome. Like this is the this is a wild kind of medium term mission trip we all get to go on together. There's short term that lasts 2 weeks or something. There's long term where you give 5-10 years. We're all on this medium term mission trip. And one of the things I do a short term mission trip every year that's 2 weeks. And I always say, hey, you know what? You can fake it for the first week. You can do the first week in your flesh. But by the second week, you got to start to really depend on God. Well, the truth is we're on this medium-term mission trip where you could do it in your flesh for a while, but we're past that now. And so now it's like, okay, I got to depend on God. I got to depend on his people. I got to take advantage of the resources that are out there because I want to be fruitful in this medium-term mission trip.
I like that. I like that. On this medium-term mission trip together. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in, everybody, today. If you made it all the way through, hopefully it's been valuable for you. We're going to keep offering resources here every week. There's the devotional going out right now each day, hopefully just encouraging you. It's part of, binding up, but it's a healthy diet of being equipped well for the sent mission includes all these things and walking with one another. And so until next time, until we see you on the weekend virtually, have a great one and walk with Christ. And let's walk with Christ together and encourage each other. Peace, everybody.